particular example is we're going to set some text for my farmer's market poster. So I'm going to go down here to the type tool. So I'm going to go ahead and put some text in. Now, just as a note, your text tool is going to kind of default to the last thing that you used. So that might mean in my case that I've got some pretty big text that's set in the font that we use for AIC because that happened to be the last thing that I did. So just to remember, it's going to keep all of those settings. So sometimes you'll type something and you'll go, why does that look so funny? That was the last thing that you happened to be doing. So if, for example, the last thing I was doing happened to be doing a postcard, I might have some very tiny text down here. So, and also the same thing goes for the color. So it might be set to like white because I was working on something that was, again, like on a darker background. And so then suddenly I can't see my text. So just kind of remember that always check your settings that are up at the top here because it may not be what you're looking for. And in this case, I know I'm going to want this to say Farmers Market, and I definitely don't want it to be this tiny white text. So I'm going to select all, and that's going to, in this case, select all of my text because I'm in a text layer, so it works a little bit differently. And I do want to change this color. Now, this, as it tells you, it's my color picker for my text. Now, I want it to be this kind of green here that's being used throughout my vegetables here. So I'm going to take this, it kind of automatically makes it this eyedropper tool, which is the same as the eyedropper tool over here. And if I select that green that I'm in here, it makes it says Farmer's Market now in the green. I can see it a lot better. Click OK. So now I don't want it to be 9 points. That's far too small. Let's make it 72 and see what that gets us. That's a bit better, but I may want to make it even larger, as I think I actually want this to be on 2 lines rather than 1. Now, you'll also notice at this point that there's a pretty big gap between farmers and market. I kind of want to make that a bit smaller. So I think I'm going to change my font first, and then once I've changed my font, then I can see if I like it. So again, I want to select my text, and I'm going to change what it is. So right now, Museo Sans, that's the default for AIC, but I'm doing a farmer's market. I want something a little bit funky, and I want a display font, something that may not work if I was, say, setting a lot of text that people want to read, but this is like a big headline. So I want something that looks, I don't know, kind of rustic and craftsy or something. So I'm going to have a look through my fonts. Now you'll notice over here on the right hand side, it'll show you a example of what it looks like. And you might also notice as I am kind of scrolling down that my actual text over here is kind of showing me what it looks like. But based on where it is, I can't see it all that well. So I'm looking through. There's something that I want. I actually know that there's one that I've just loaded in that I want, and it's called Jazz. So I'm going to select this guy. So I think this looks kind of like, it's like hand-drawn. It kind of matches a little bit what's going on here, so that's the one that I want. I'm going to move my text kind of more towards the middle here. You can see I got one that kind of lines it up with the middle here. Awesome. So now if I want to change the text, like I'm going to want to make it bigger and to kind of make that space smaller, I need to go back to the text tool in order to then change it. And I want to click actually on the text. If I click somewhere else, it's going to make a new text layer. So actually click like on the line of the text. So I'm going to highlight my text again. Now, a couple things. One, do I want it to be left aligned, right aligned, or centered? I can change that right up here. Now, this is centered aligned, but it doesn't quite look it. And part of that is because I still have this space left over from when I typed out farmer's market. So I'm going to delete that space, and that looks a bit better already. So I select it all, and I want it to be bigger than 72 points, but I don't have anything bigger than that in my drop down. I can actually just go ahead and type in the size I want. So I'm going to try 150. That's good, maybe a little bit big. Let's try 125. Yeah, that's better too. Now you'll notice that the space in between my lines is now a bit smaller. Now why is that? Normally that changes automatically based on the size of your text, right? Well, remember I said that things will go back to the last thing that you used? The last time I used this, I set that space in between those lines manually. And that means that it remembered the setting that I had put in for it and kept that, which was fine for the last thing I used, but maybe not fine going forward. So where do I find the setting for the space between the lines? Well, up here in this bar, you have some things, but you don't have maybe everything you need. So there's a little icon for an extra folder. And if I click on that, it brings up all the other settings. And you can see this right here. It shows you 2 lines stacked on top of each other. Well, I set that the last time I was using this to 125 points. Now that's the same as the size that I'm using for my text. So that actually kind of looks all right. If I had a letter that went like a P or a Q that came down below the line here, that probably would have hit my word market and that wouldn't have been good. So I can click the drop down and I can make it auto, or I can leave it as it is right now, which I'm happy with, but this is where that lives if you need it later. I can also change the space between the letters. So for example, if I wanted it to be more spaced out, I could like make that 10. You can see it move a little bit, 50, and like, you know, that's kind of adding a bit of space. And sometimes when it's something big like that, that looks good. But I don't like how it looks between the apostrophe and the S. That's too much space. So I'm going to change it so I don't have everything selected. I'm just going to put my cursor directly between the 2 letters I want to move closer together, because I want this apostrophe and this S to be closer. So now you see these 2 right here, where instead of showing a bunch of letters, it's just like, it's that space between these 2. That's set to 75. What happens if I make this guy negative 75? That's a little bit better, but I want it even tighter. And I can actually just keep clicking the down arrow and it'll just kind of keep scooching that guy in. I think that visually looks a lot closer to the space that I've got between my other letters. I think I actually want to bring down, oops, maybe not quite that much for, I'm gonna bring this guy down, but I only want to bring this guy down maybe, yeah, no, maybe even a little bit less than that, maybe 50. So I'm kind of happy with how that looks. Now, again, I just want to remind you, if I go back into the text tool, I could make this left aligned or centered aligned. And as you can see, since I just have one word selected, it's just doing that. If I select everything, then it left aligns it, but I want to keep it centered aligned. That makes, I like how that looks. So now I've changed to the move tool so that I can like play with where it's spaced. I think I like it there. Now I think I want to scooch my corn and pumpkins up a little bit. So again, my corn and pumpkins are all linked, so I just need to click one of the layers. And I'm just going to scooch that up a little bit. And that's good, because I need to put the time and the date that I'm having my farmer's market down at the bottom here. So I can't remember what time and date I had. So let's go ahead and see. It's Saturday and Sunday, 8 to 1 p.m. Great. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a second type layer. So I'm going to grab my text tool again. And instead of selecting inside farmer's market, I'm going to select anywhere else. And it's going to give me some new text that again is set the exact same way that my last text was. So let me just type out Saturday and Sunday, 8, what was it again? It's 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. a.m. Oops. And see, I have accidentally clicked something else. I'll go back to text. Click in my text area, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Now, that looks wonderful for my title text, but I want something a little bit plainer and a little bit easier to read for the date and time. So first off, I want to make that smaller. So let me go ahead and make that 72 points. And I don't want it to be so big and far away anymore, so let's just set this back to auto, and then I can change it if I want to. Now, I just want to center this so you can kind of see what it looks like. All right, you're in the center now. So I want something a bit plainer. So let me select all my type again. I'm going to go back up to change my font. Now, one thing that's nice is that you can filter your fonts. So we're going to go into a little bit about typography in the coming weeks, but spoiler alert, there are different kinds of fonts. Some are serif, some are sans serif. We're going to get into why this is the case later, but serif fonts are easy to read in print. There's something about how they are made that makes the eye go from one letter to another really easily, and we understand the words. So because of that, I'm gonna pick a serif font for my text for my date and time. Understandably, decorative fonts, those are things like what I've set Farmer's Market in that are pretty but maybe hard to read for like information, handwriting, it's handwritten. We can get into what these other guys, script, you probably understand what that one is. We can get into the other stuff later. But for right now, I want to look at my serif fonts. So I know that these are more or less going to be ones that are kind of easy to read straight off the bat. Now, as you can see, as I scroll through here, again, you can see it changing as I scroll through. And what do I want? I want Minion. Looks kind of nice. So I'm going to select that. And okay, Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Maybe a little bit smaller. So again, I'm going to select the size. A little bit smaller. Let's go for 65. Yeah, happy with that. You know what, I actually want this kind of like tucked in with my radishes here. So you know what, I'm going to go and move that corn back down again. Yeah, I think I like that. Now, the other thing that I got to remember is that since this holds on to the settings I had last time, this is spaced out a bit at 75. I don't want this spaced out because it's kind of, it doesn't look quite the same. I don't read it quite as easily. So I'm going to make that kind of tucked together a little bit more, and I think I do want to get these guys a little bit closer together again. So let's try 72, see it scooches it up a little bit. But what I want to make sure is I don't run into where my AM and my Y hit together. So I'm going to make sure I've got enough room. Yeah, kind of like tucked in. Maybe kind of sitting above my radishes there. I'm going to scoot my corn up a little bit. Yeah, that gets me all the information I need. And I think it looks like it'll be a fun farmer's market. Remember to save. And there you've got your poster. You're good to go.